Hi, friends. I'm back, and I want to share with you today a little bit about Lewis Howes' Summit of Greatness. It was my first time attending Summit, and I have to tell you, I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much, I purchased a ticket for next year. So, I want to share with you a little bit about the content that really resonated with me, and hopefully through that, you will get a picture of what it's like to be inside the summit. Now, first of all, the summit is held, and I'll keep referring to it as the summit. The summit is held in Columbus, Ohio, which is a really lovely town, and it's growing. It's so nice. I've been there before, and this time I really got to experience it. So I'm really grateful for that. So I want to share with you a little bit about day one. Now, I'm going to refer to my notes because I want to make sure that I share with you everything that resonated with me. So I'll first start off. Every year, Lewis creates a list of things he's afraid of, and then he will work to tackle that, or at least one of those things, which I thought was really interesting because a lot of times we let fear, and I know I do this, we let fear hold us back. And this is a really great way to not do that, to look at it head on and say, let's go. So the first speaker that we had was LeAnn Rimes. Now, I felt really old because when I posted something on my Facebook page about LeAnn Rimes, somebody asked, who was that? So the best way I could describe her was like Taylor Swift of country music before social media. Started at a young age, beautiful voice. She hasn't been in the limelight so recently, but she shared with us a little bit about what she's been doing and really healing herself. And so what I thought was really interesting was, and I'll just write one thing that really stuck out to me. What is a piece of me that is craving to be voiced? Now, LeAnn talked about how she had used her voice for singing and can just, do that. That was just so much part of her life. But had she actually used her voice in any other way? And so through this journey that she's been on, she really said, I felt like the feminine voice. I felt like the goddess. She had all of these aspects to her that really needed to be identified, nurtured, and brought to life. And so that's what she's been on. That's the journey that she's been on. She also has a blog called Soul of Everly. It's and I'll share the website so that way you get to see it. So that was really nice. She took us through a chant. It was really lovely and a great way to open the summit up. The next person, and this was somebody I was so super excited about because I love his podcast, is Ed Mylett. Now, I'm a new Ed Mylett Max Out person, but I absolutely love the content he shares. And so some of his messages that resonated with me were that you need to figure out how to give more love and more value. And then there are 5 emotions we experience on a regular basis. And what's your emotional home? Which one do you tend to go to more? I thought that was really interesting because part of it is just self-awareness, right? Like if we can tell, oh my God, I go to the negative emotion so much, now we have identified that and then we can choose to do something about it. So I thought that was super interesting. Also, take control of what's important to you. I love that. Repetitively ask yourself, what is it that you want? Now, I love this because for me, I see it as, and the reason why I took a note on that is because I see it as sometimes we just kind of like float through the day, or maybe that's just, I'll say I float through the day. And I'm like, yeah, I've got goals. I write down a to-do list, but what am I actually going towards? What are those actions in alignment with a goal? Or am I just kind of like going through the motions? We don't really, like that may not be the most productive thing. So what is it that you want? Keep repeating it. Keep telling yourself, because then you're going to act in alignment with that, number one. Number two, if you believe in the law of attraction, then those are things you're telling the universe that there's a sign that you want it and you're ready and you can take it. You can handle it. And what I thought was really interesting was, and I forget what exactly he calls it, but I'll call it the thermostat of life. He goes, so, you're at this event and maybe you're at a 99. You are like jacked up. This is so great. I love it. All of this positive stuff. But then a few weeks go by and you'll start going back down to maybe where what you're worth. And maybe that worth on a temperature gauge would be a 75. So it's one reason why I love events, because they help me. That's another reason why I love masterminds. They help me increase my temperature. And so that's part, I think, of doing work to raise that temperature of life. So that way I am operating at a higher vibration and a higher level, higher temperature, whatever you want to call it. But I am really being blissfully dissatisfied, is what Ed called it. And what I also love about what he said was, chase the person you were meant to be. So somebody asked, because he has, I think, a $9 million net worth. He has made a fair sum of money. But like at that point, what are you chasing? Because don't you have it all? He goes, he thinks about it because he's a religious person and he believes in God, and talks about, when he goes to heaven, who is his twin that he sees there? What does that person look like? How does he act? And he is striving to be that version of himself that he will ultimately meet. So I thought that was really interesting. But even for somebody like you or me, maybe we believe in that, but maybe it's just we have this idea of who we are when we really aren't, just when we're living our potential. And what does that person look like? And chasing that person. And I love that, because I'm starting to do that through showing up for myself. And so this is again why it resonated with me, because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to do those things, which is good. And he, another piece of advice, repurpose your mess into your message. I love that. And what I also wrote was, you hold the pen to write your story, and you can turn the page and write the new chapter. So it's all about you. It's not about everything else in the environment. It's about how you manage that. Another piece of advice that he gave was, don't touch your phone for the first 30 minutes upon waking, because it gets you into a reactive state. Now you've got to respond to this message and that message, and you've got to send the email to that person. Like, somebody else is directing your day and you want to direct your day. So that's part of that take control. Now, he also said that he doesn't have balance, and balance was boredom. And now he's present in whatever moment he's in. And he talked about being present with his kids, which I struggle with, but also try to do as well. One of the things which actually made me feel good, because again, it's kind of like validation that I'm doing some of the right stuff, which is he schedules family time and then builds around that. And so one of the things that I do is I have in my calendar mom life and then workout life. And so that was really nice to see. I think, balance is a tricky thing, because some people believe that you can balance and you can have it all. And I don't think that's correct. So I would agree with him to a certain extent. I think we can try to have some kind of balance, but ultimately something has to give, and it's a prioritization. Like I've I've always said, because somebody's asked me, how do you do all this stuff? It's a it's a prioritization. I prioritize what's most important to me, and I try to act in alignment with that. So 75 hard. Right now, that is a priority for me. I'm 8 days until the finish. So I am going to be committed and do what I need to do to get that done. And that's just one example. So somebody asked a question, he gets a ton of DMs and messages. What would make somebody stand out to him or anybody else of his level? And he said, for me, it's acknowledging a contribution that resonated and how it changed your life. So I thought that was really nice. Another speaker that was there was Kyle Cease. Now, I did not know him before coming into Summit, but oh my gosh, I love it. I loved his message, and I purchased his book because I really wanted to understand his message more. And it was so thoughtful and so good. And what I loved about him was that he was really authentic. So after Stefan Speaks, who was one of the last speakers, came out, Kyle had a relationship issue. I think Lewis also had broken up with somebody and now is in a new relationship. And so they're backstage kind of lamenting about this. And Kyle's like, man, we come out on stage and everybody thinks we have it together, but we have the same issues. We're back there like, oh. And then they come out and they're like, hey guys. So I love that he shared that with us, because it was something that I also noticed was, even with Lewis, just kind of sidetrack for a second, it was a really great event. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was worth what I paid. And sure, there are logistical things that could be better, like the book signing line, that type of thing. Opening doors when you say you're going to open them. But those are things we can live with. I mean, that's not like the big stuff, But what I love is that Lewis was out there with note cards and he's reading off of them. And I was just like, he's just a guy from the Midwest who worked hard and made something out of himself. But his event, it was so good. I don't want anybody to misunderstand. It was so good, but anybody could put on an event with a team like that. It's just a matter of ordering the things and organizing and having a team to take care of logistics. But it made me realize, or just remember, that he's human too, and he has a lot of strengths. And maybe remembering what he has to say when he goes on stage for this event wasn't one of them at that moment. So I thought that was really refreshing. Okay, now, that was a little side note. Let's get back to the content. What I love about what Kyle said was, he goes, love right now, because it adds up to the big time. And he goes, the thing that you fear, say that and say, and I love that. Because what he is saying in his message is that the universe isn't going to give you something if you're not ready for it. So if you can learn to love yourself, as an example, and the example that was used was around a relationship. So if somebody is single, they've been single for a while, instead of saying, I'm okay with being single, say, you know what, I love myself, and I am single, and I love that, truly love it. It has to be authentic, but say that, and I love it, because when you do love it, then the universe is going to say, okay, cool. She can handle that. Now let's bring a mate into her life. So that was really interesting. There was a lot of law of attraction stuff, which, to be candid, I am super interested in, but the science part of me is how does that really work? So I'm kind of in this weird space with it. And I may share more actually about it as I kind of go through that journey. What I also thought was interesting was that people pleasers attract takers. That was like, okay. Um, so those were a few things that Kyle talked about. The next person on stage was Jesse Itzler. He was just a dynamite. And he shared so much about his life, and really what it came down to was that what I noticed was that he found a way, even if it involved, particularly when he was younger, a little bit of scheming, but he found a way to make stuff happen. I don't know that I'd be as bold to do that. Like, to me, his scheming and his is rule breaking to me, and I like rules, so I wouldn't necessarily go that route, but it was really interesting to hear. But one of the other things that he said was, don't negotiate your goals. I love that. If you don't have a seat at the table, make one. Pressure is a privilege. Compliment folks, congratulate them, and consult them. Plant seeds to bear fruit later. Build your life resume. He's all about life experiences. So I thought that was really interesting. He goes, have no lose years. Every month, add one daily winning habit to your life. And then you'll have after a year, you'll have 12 new amazing habits. Put one thing on your calendar that defines your year. And he also talked about Kevin's rule, and I was listening so much that I forgot to write what Kevin's rule is. Be where your feet are, which I think is about being present. And do life with urgency. And just look at the next step and not the big picture, because then you may get overwhelmed, which I think is super good advice. The other thing he talked about was don't give your pain a voice, because when you do, it becomes real. And so he talked about, as he was doing this running, he was doing this race, and it was really hard. And he does not allow his team to say anything negative to him, because when that happens, it becomes real. And so he was he's even gone as far as, like, when he was doing this race, his vision was a bit off, which can happen, but his vision was a bit off because he was using a headlight. It was at night. And he was telling his team, my vision is a bit off, I'm not sure. And his team was like, oh no, man, this happens all the time, like with runners. Yeah, you're fine. All you need to do is go out there again and you'll be fine. And afterwards, the team member was like, yeah, I didn't really know if that was the case, but I just said it because it was a positive thing. And that's how he made it through. So another thing, let's just see here. Remember tomorrow, and remember how the decision today will affect tomorrow. I thought that was really powerful. So when you're kind of like, for me, if I think about, do I really want to do, reach out? Do I really want to do a call? Do I really want to do this? The no today will affect tomorrow, or 2 years, or 2 months, or whatever it is down the road. So that's another reason to take care and do today. Now, that was day 1. There was a lot of stuff. On day 2, Marissa Peer was the first speaker, and she is like a mindset coach. And she said, the mind doesn't care if what you're telling it is right or wrong. It'll sink in. So whatever you tell it sinks in. So tell yourself positive things, because if you tell yourself you're awful, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're, whatever, it'll believe that. And if you also tell yourself you're amazing, you're smart, you're beautiful, you are lovely, your mind believes that too. So which one do you want it to believe? The positive one, of course. The mind loves to get excited. You can rationalize why things are so bad, or you could talk positively to yourself. Speak to yourself on the things that you want. And this I thought was interesting. When you say my, you own it. But when you say the, it's not yours. So as one example, somebody in the audience was like, well, my ex-husband, wait, the ex-husband, because it wasn't hers anymore. So it was a way of just kind of distancing herself from that. And the mind works in the present tense. So use the words right now when you want something and really fall in love with yourself. To me, I think this all revolved around self-talk and reframing. And there was a lot of law of attraction as well. She said 2 sentences that will change your life are, I love it and I want it. And she said, and when you're challenged, when you have something that you're not really sure you want to do, you've kind of got those feelings about it, say, I've chosen to do X and I am choosing to feel great about it, because that is kind of telling your brain where you want, what direction, how you want to show up. And what she used an example, getting back to the I love it, I want it. She used an example, and we all know this from, you may know this from some of the information that's been out there about the brain, but the brain doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. So it's the actual same chemical response in the brain, which I think is super fascinating. So when you're scared, you can actually just start reframing that of, oh my God, I'm scared to speak in public, to go, I am so excited to speak in public. And it's reframing, but your brain, chemically, your brain's like, oh yeah, butterflies. Are they excited butterflies or nervous butterflies? Doesn't really know, but it's you that's giving yourself that emotion. So I love it. And so she was on a roller coaster and did not want to be on there. And she was like, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. And she keeps going. And then her daughter, who she was on the roller coaster with, was like, Mommy, I'm so confused. Did you love being on the roller coaster? She was like, oh no, I did not love that. But I was trying to tell my brain I did. She goes, well, you confused me and I like the roller coaster. I didn't like it, but now I like it. So it's interesting too about, this is another side note, what kids pick up, things are caught before they're taught. She sees in her practice 3 things that people generally will have issues with, or the 3 things that are wrong. They think that they're not good enough, that what they want isn't available, or they can't connect because they're so different. And she's worked with a bunch of celebrities, but the difference between them and us are celebrities won't take no for an answer. And that's the only difference, but they have the same type of issues. So the way that you should talk to yourself, and more importantly, tell kids to get this into their habit, into their mindset now, which is say, I'm good enough, I matter, and I love myself. Now, I love that because being a kid these days is pretty hard. I have 2, and I know that it can be just a challenge, and school can be a challenge sometimes. And so if you tell yourself, or if the kids start telling themselves now, I matter, I'm good enough, and I love myself, that's going to be a part of their value system, and they will grow up to be much stronger. Now, there was another speaker, Dr. Ala Murabit. I absolutely loved her because she spoke on things that really I'm super passionate about. I think this one may have been a little, because it was semi-political, I think part of the audience didn't connect well with her. But I really, I love the message. I'm not sure it was right for this audience, but I think for me, I can tease out and make it relevant for entrepreneurs and just the everyday person. So the things that I wrote down were, where do I hold power? And how do I hold power and use it to privilege others? That is amazing, because sometimes we don't see what power we have, number one, and sometimes we don't use our privilege or our power to help others. So I think that was a really great question to reflect on. The people who can transform a community are the people of that community. I absolutely love this because it speaks about, I think it starts speaking about diversity and inclusion and representation. And if you have, and if we just use our political system for an example, if you have all men in a Congress, and this isn't the US system because I know that there are women in there, but as an example, if you have all men in a Congress, how can a man understand what it's like to be a woman or someone who's trans? It's really hard for them to do that because they're a man and they don't have the experience of a woman. And I mean, here's like a really simple example of this that I absolutely love. Women, so for user experience design and usability design, so like when people design countertops or anything like that, or bathrooms, usually men are the ones who had been designing it, and so they will design it based on what they know of their body. But a woman's body is different, and so curving out part of a cabinet or the height of something is really important, but it's not in their experience. So it's not like blaming them, but they don't have that experience. They may not have that experience to know. And so that's why representation by people of that community or those users is really important when, especially in politics, but when you want to transform a community. And I absolutely love that. And she said something that I wholeheartedly agree with, which is diversity brings perspective. Now, I kind of tack on to that. Perspective brings good information on which to make well-informed decisions. So if somebody's making policy, for example, or rules for a community, if it's only their view because that's all they have and that's all that's there, they may not have this great perspective of different opinions to really make the best decision or the best policy or whatever the case may be. And so it's really just about gaining information to make good decisions. And then I love this too. She said, believe in God. She has a saying in her religion, which is believe in God, but tie your camel. To me, it's like the old Reagan saying, trust but verify. And really, what action have you taken? You can have thoughts and prayers, but you have to go beyond that and take some action. And I really love that. And she goes, what have we done in our communities before we really start talking about others? Which, again, is so good. And somebody said, well, what can I do? How can I even get started? And she goes, what are the challenges in your local community that you can help with, that you're well versed in and can help with, and then do that. And this was another, I think, really great piece of advice. Bring a collective before you walk in the room. So have that support system with you. And we all know having support is key, no matter what we do. And I love this too. Know your history so that you can figure out what was missing or what went wrong so that you can now, again, have good information and help affect change. Then the last speaker was Stefan Speaks, and he is a relationship and life coach. And he had so much good advice. And I'll just start off. Anyone who feels attacked by your words will defend themselves. And so think about how you say things, not what you say. And take an inventory. How are you talking to people? Are you projecting a positive or a negative energy? He also says letters will help our communication because we tend to express more in letters. So use letters to help heal. He also said, connection is key for a romantic relationship. Know your worth and know that you deserve it. Add accountability to your relationship. Do relationship checkups. What's working well? What's not working so well? And how can we keep it going? And this was really interesting. A good person does not mean that they are the right person. But also get in tune with yourself and know what you need. Somebody asked what one of the biggest fears was for people in relationships. And because fear of being alone is the biggest fear and why we tend to stay in relationships too long. Really gets back to, do you love yourself to heal yourself? And I thought that was pretty powerful. Be mindful of non-sexual intimacy and be more specific. For women in particular, be more specific with what you need. And he gave this really great example of how he was coaching this couple, and the woman said, listen, I just want to watch TV with my husband. And so they both watch TV. The next time they come in, the guy is like, oh, the woman is mad. And she goes, well, let me tell you what happened. We watched TV, but I was on this side of the couch and he was on that side of the couch. So we weren't together. And the guy was like, she told me to watch TV with her and I watched TV with her. And so that's where being really specific with what you want and need is key. Communicate and be honest. We need to be able to handle constructive criticism and practice. Criticize in a positive way. And one of the tests to see if there's a connection is remove all distractions and see if you can enjoy them for hours. So going on a long car ride and not having the radio and just being there, being present with you and your person. See if they really are your person. You also said your partner should be your best friend. And I thought that was really interesting. So those are some of my key takeaways from Summit of Greatness. I absolutely loved it. The after party was amazing. And if you have any questions about any of the takeaways, what resonated, or just have questions in general about the Summit of Greatness, let me know. I'd be happy to help. Have a fantastic day.